Alliance for the Brave, a program that advocates for our active military, veterans, and first responders. Presented by Gear Services Web Design. Alliance for the Brave, serving and empowering those who serve our great country in the line of duty. Tune in, join in, and plug in with us around the globe. Welcome to Alliance for the Brave.
In the air everywhere across America, you're listening to Alliance for the Brave, where we bring education, information, and communication to today's veterans, active duty military, American patriots, and especially our first responders and medical technicians. Joining me today, London Mason, my partner in doing this insane program. London,
boom, artillery.
Yeah, I know. And when you guys find out what real naval gunfire is, let me know.
Hey, Jim, watch it. It's better on the ground than on the sea.
Yeah.
Go Army, beat Navy?
Okay,
all right.
I think the winner for that is both colleges.
All right, I'll leave it alone.
Okay, so we got Army and I'm Navy. Joining us today, a very good friend. I think he's actually becoming a co-host on our program. Dr. Stephen Holt, the director of the VA North Texas, 40 counties. Dr. Holt, welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all my fellow veterans out there listening to the show, and as always, thanks for inviting me.
You know, I always go, Dr. Holt, because that's your predominant title is director, but you're also a retired Air Force colonel.
Yes,
Colonel. And so we could call you Colonel Dr. Holt or Dr. Colonel Holt.
Or hey you.
Oh, okay.
Now, Dr. Holt, did they still say aim high? Was that
aim high, fly, fight, and win?
All right. I think it's really important while we're having a little fun, but to talk about something new and wonderful that the VA has. And Dr. Holt, you and I were talking about it the other day, and that's the Spinal Cord Center that's going in. So tell us a little bit about the background of that and what's happening, because this is not just a Dallas-Fort Worth. This is a nationwide deal that's working out. So please tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So this is really exciting. And this is a spinal cord injury unit, or SCI. If I say SCI, that's what I'm referring to. And it's a project where we're going to add a $250 million building that will initially have apartments for 30 veterans. And the top will be operational. The bottom is shelled out to be completed later. It's really incredible because when I first joined the VA in 2007 and came to Dallas in 2008, this project had made the list of projects we wanted to do year after year, but never made the funded list. It's finally made the funded list, and the law has been signed. The bill that funds it, it's been signed into to law. So we're finally going to get this. Now, why is this important? Okay, this is for people who've had spinal cord injury, and it's a long-term facility. What I currently have is a 30-bed short-term. So someone with a spinal cord injury gets sick, they come into our current unit. This new unit, and people who have a new injury, as we work to train them how to enjoy their life and master their surroundings with their new limitations. Currently, when I do that, I have to send them all over the hospital because I don't have the services like physical rehab or training them how to use an oven or a dishwasher or a range, all the things that are specially modified that we will put into their house to enable them to live as much of a normal life as absolutely possible. But they have to go all over the hospital. They have to have appointments to be trained and use this stuff. And they only get maybe an hour a day on any one of these modalities because it's all spread out. Now, the new Spinal Cord Injury Center that we will break ground on next year, expected to be completed in about 2.5 years, will have 30 apartments. The veteran will live in an apartment, and each of these apartments is fully decked out with all of the new equipment and things that are there to modify so that the person can have a normal life there. So they'll spend 24 hours a day living in an apartment with all the modifications that are going to be made to their home. And they'll be well experienced at this so that when they are discharged to home, it's like nothing. You know, they've used all this stuff. They know how it works. They're very good at it. So it's really exciting. It's all being brought into a really state-of-the-art modern facility. The other thing that's really neat about this, if you look at where all these other facilities are, the other 6, this will be the 7th in the VA, okay? So the other facilities are located in Boston, Cleveland, Hampton, Virginia, Hines, which is in Illinois, Long Beach, and Tampa. All of those facilities are more than 3 states away from Texas. There's nothing within three states within that range of Texas. So this is a really exciting thing we have going that will really help our veterans with spinal cord injuries and allow them to get back to as much of a normal life as can be achieved. I mean, we're really very fortunate that we have that strong support from Congress and stuff to get this funded.
Spinal cord injuries, especially in the military, many times it's in Army. It could be you have some spinal cord problem.
Yeah, I had an ACDF surgery a few years back where my spine, things like that, left side was very numb all the time. But yeah, this is very important. So we appreciate it, Dr. Holt.
Dr. Holt, one of the things too, obviously I'm Navy, I was in Naval Air, the taking off and landing on aircraft carriers jerks the living daylights out of a pilot and a flight crew. I flew out to the USS Truman in 2017, and boy, I remembered, but I didn't remember what it's like to land or take off. These are things that are constantly jerking people around, and those create issues as well as going in a Humvee across, rough terrain. So we have a lot of this to various degrees, not just the catastrophic accident, but we have a lot of this to various degrees, which can be debilitating over time, correct?
Absolutely. And you see that in a wide range of military professions. So those people go to airborne, for instance, and do frequent jumps. They get compression of their disc in between their vertebrae in the back, which then can lead to pressure on the nerves and causing nerve problems. Fighter pilots who go out and routinely pull 9Gs in aircraft, they get that compression over time as well. Anybody who has to ride the rails on an ejection seat runs a real risk of compressing those discs. And tankers, anything, like you said, that there's a lot of vibration, a lot of bumping and stuff. That constant jarring and stuff tends to wear out the disc, which are like the spacer. It's the shock absorbers between the vertebrae in the back. And as those wear out and compress, you run an increased risk of putting pressure on the nerve roots that come out of the spinal cord.
I think it's fantastic, too, that you're really focusing on things that take people out of the job market, take them out of life. And so you're teaching them how to live and how to do well. How does this compare, for instance, to the Intrepid Center down in San Antonio?
It's very similar, but the Intrepid Center is a DOD facility, as I recall.
Oh, I didn't realize
the
that.
VA operates some in partnership, but it is a DOD facility. And it's very similar in some ways, except we have the apartments, which is a major
No, they
plus.
don't have that. Yeah. I've been there. And they have a lot of other things to train somebody to be able to go back into the field. But with the spinal cord injury, you're not only talking about the younger guys, but you're talking about even older guys who've been retired for a while, that these injuries over time magnify. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. So I'll give you a personal, for instance. I have a series of compression fractures from an aircraft mishap. And over time, those areas have gotten worse, so that I'm starting to get some chronic pain in my back and whatnot. So unfortunately, these wear and tear type injuries, cumulative trauma we call it in occupational medicine, tend to get worse.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I talked with a Korean War veteran who was on a minesweeper during Korea. Now, those things are like bouncing up and down on the ocean. Yeah. And those guys, they just being on that ship, you're constantly doing that. So these are the types of things. Now, I want to kind of take a little bit of a segue from that, because frequently you told me when we first got started that 70% of the medical professionals in the United States study at the VA.
70% of the physicians in the United States have done at least some of their training at a VA.
So now you've got the Spinal Cord Center here, and you work in conjunction with UT Southwestern, you'll also be able to be training young interns or people in spinal cord areas, which relates and goes out. So it's not just about veterans and what you're doing and what you're creating. You're creating a platform to train medical professionals hands-on to go out into the community, correct?
Absolutely. And that's one of the great values of the VA training. You see injuries and injury patterns that aren't as common. And so the training opportunities aren't as common in the non-military VA arena. And certainly we see a tremendous amount of PTSD, for instance, as a military, but we see these other physical injuries. And one of the ways to think about this is you see professional football players when they're in their 50s and 60s, and they look pretty beat up, right? And that's after 4 or 5 years of professional football and maybe 5 years of college and other things. Well, the military people in those things like infantry, where they're carrying a 110-pound pack, et cetera, they get the same amount of cumulative trauma just spread out over a 20-year career versus a 5-year career. So we see the same thing. So when you think of this, like I said, you look at these professional athletes when they're in their 50s and 60s and say, man, they look really beat up. Well, a lot of our military folks have had the same amount of cumulative trauma over time.
I've known a lot of Dallas Cowboys over my being here in Dallas. And man, you get on the elevator with one of these guys and you look and you go, oh, I recognize you. And you're walking with 2 canes. And it's just a horribly painful situation. And for the person themselves, the amount of pain they endure is unbelievable. So one of the big things, too, is you're working with some different treatments and things to help them, because what's happened in the past is they just said, here, take this, go home, and sweat through it. So you're training them how to live and also helping them so that they can be less pain-free and less drug-free, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And as you and I have talked about a future segment to talk about the whole health initiative, and that's one of the key things of the whole health is how do we enable our veterans to be able to self-manage their pain and stuff and not be reliant on medications and all the fear that goes around with, am I going to get this refilled? They get lost in the mail. Am I going to have withdrawal problems? Those kind of things. So you're absolutely right. Yes.
One of the big things a lot of people don't realize, though, is when you're talking about the VA, you're talking about a specialized medical for military. One of the things is if you're a civilian and you go to a hospital, they're going to treat that and they're going to get you out the door as fast as possible.
Right. So the economic model, first off, is a lot different. In the civilian, they are for profit, and they have to be. That's they have to generate revenues to stay in business, because in the VA, we're not a for-profit, so we're able to take a different approach, and we're able to offer a lot of modalities that wouldn't be a profit-making in the private sector. We're able to bring things for the veterans that would not commonly be available.
And because your background is you're a retired Air Force flight surgeon, which I always called it, you have more knowledge, not just empathy, but more knowledge about what a veteran has gone through in the military. And that's important, because you may treat this and then you go, you know what, we ought to take a look at this, and we ought to take a look at that, and we ought to take a look at this, and these things all relate together. You don't find that typically in civilian. So I'll tell you what, let's do. Why don't we take a break for just a second? Thank you for joining us on Facebook. If you're with us on Facebook, stay with us. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the VA healthcare system. This is Alliance for the Brave. I'm Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, London Mason, U.S. Army veteran, and without a doubt, one of the most interesting men I've ever met, Dr. Stephen Holt, the director of the VA North Texas, 40 counties, including Oklahoma. Thank you for being on board. Stay with us. We'll be right back after these words from all of our partners. This is Alliance for the Brave. Yeah, London, Facebook.
Dr. Holt, I got a question for you. So, and you may have alluded to it, but how did the conversation, because I'm just in awe about this spinal cord thing that you're doing. How did the conversation develop to like create the apartments and you know, how did that come about?
Right. So the experts, we have a very good spinal cord injury group at Central Office VACO. And there's also an incredibly powerful, effective advocate group called the Paralyzed Veterans of America. And they actually come in and survey my facility twice a year and write a report that goes right to the secretary. So they have been able to say, here are the state-of-the-art kind of things that should be available to our veterans. Let's plan for it, put it together, and deliver it. And again, PVA is just an incredible group. I'm so glad that they exist because they are probably the strongest veteran advocate group for a single group of veterans that I'm aware of.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
And in doing this, this becomes a whole, we were talking about that earlier, and yes, I can't wait till we do the program, talking about a whole health. You're not just treating the spinal cord, you're treating the veteran's whole health. Exactly.
And we're giving them the tools to manage their situation themselves. And again, you know, I think one of the fears people have is being in unrelenting pain. And another fear, if they're on medications for pain that are controlled substances, is that those medications will be cut back or they won't get them. And there has been a strong move starting about 10 years ago to reduce the use of opioids. So these allow the veteran to have control and security and better manage their life.
Without a doubt. Now, one of the biggest complaints that I've heard over the years is the paperwork is so difficult to get into the VA. This is so difficult. It's not anymore. The VA has changed a great deal, and so there are VA accredited reps across the nation, some of them in DAV, some of them in VFW, some of them with American Legion, some of them that are out there providing this service. It is a free service from a VA accredited rep, and if you are a VA accredited rep, you have access to the computer information and facilities and all that. And so it's not the same getting signed up as it was, what, Dr. Holt, 10 years ago?
Yeah, certainly 10 years, 20 years ago when I first filed with the VA. And I will say something very important, because I made a mistake when I did my initial. I did it myself. And had I gone to an accredited claims officer through one of the VSOs, I would have done much better in the system. And so I can't tell you enough how important those certified claims officers are.
Now, here in the state of Texas, where we have the fastest growing veteran population, we have, through the Texas Veterans Commission, accredited VA claims officers, the county service officer. For instance, in Dallas County, it's a guy named James Henderson. These guys are amazing, and they're plugged in nationwide. I called up James one time, and I had somebody in Richmond, Virginia, and man, within an hour or two, he called me back and said, have them call this person.
Yeah. And the other thing, they get feedback as to what worked and what didn't. And like I said, being a doctor, I thought, oh, I could do that, so I'm good at it. But guess what? I didn't do it as good as they are.
Yeah, Dr. Holt, I made the same. I made the same mistake, and you're definitely right. You think one way, but then just turns out another.
Exactly.
All right, we got about 45 seconds. We're going to be cut off. As we go into this next segment, again, let's deep dive into all of the things that are going to be handled.
A great country in the line of duty. Today's program is presented by Gear Services Web Design. Learn more about our mission and how you can plug in with us at allianceforthebrave.com. Now, back to the conversation.
Welcome back. You're on board with Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, London Mason, U.S. Army veteran, and Air Force veteran, flight surgeon, director of the VA, one of the most dedicated men to veterans I've ever met, Dr. Stephen Holt. Dr. Holt, it is a joy to have you on board. It's a bigger joy to hear, though, your enthusiasm about this center that you are getting ready to build, which is a spinal cord rehabilitation, injury help. Tell us a little bit deep of all of the things that are going to be going on. You've told us about the apartment and training somebody to live with the spinal cord injury. Tell us a little bit more about some of the other treatments that are going to be available.
Sure. So let me just emphasize to start with, when someone has a significant spinal cord injury, almost everything they do changes in how they're going to do it. And it's a lot of coping that has to go in. So we have the psychologists, we have the social workers, we have the nutritionists, all those specialties that come in and help the veteran overcome their new disability and live a normal life to the maximum degree possible. And again, it's everything like, how do you take a shower? How do you get out of the bed and get into your wheelchair? How do you load your laundry into your laundry machine? All these things is different. Your world has suddenly changed, and you have to have a whole new set of coping mechanisms. And certainly one of those coping mechanisms, how do you deal with the times when you're depressed? What do you do? How do you find meaning in life, and how do you march on? Okay, so we bring all these specialists together, the physicians, the nurses, the psychologists, the social workers, the people who work with your prosthetics, the different devices and things that will be attached to your body, your wheelchair, those sort of things together. How do you maintain your wheelchair, for instance? We bring all that together in one center instead of having to send you to 20 different places across my hospital, which occupies about 100 acres.
Yeah,
and
it's huge.
It's the second largest in the VA. So
in all of this, you're going to not only get training, experience, but you're going to get the ability to really recover. Because I believe our body helps heal itself when we get the right training, the right brain training, whatever we're doing. And this is incredibly important. And again, I want to make a point. We think of spinal cord injury as being the slam, bam, crash, bang, boom, and you're in deep trouble. It's not always that way. It can be something that is over time degenerative, like you talked about. You were in an accident in an airplane. I was in an accident in an airplane too. We walked away. I don't think it affected my spine, but it darn sure affected how I look at fire. And to be in an airplane, a jet loaded with fuel and going down a runway and on fire is no fun. But I didn't get injured. I think a lot of people have been injured, but a lot of these injuries are multiple. One little one here, a little one there.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how your spinal disc degenerates. Now, are there some things to help rebuild the disc? Are there some medical things that are going on in that area?
yeah, so there are things we call non-invasive, where we can actually inject material to basically increase the space between the vertebrae, kind of restore that cushioning effect. That can be done in a lot of people. And then when that fails for any one of a number of reasons, you might be allergic to the material we use, for instance, they can actually go in and do surgically put hardware in that maintains the spacing between the vertebrae. That's something, that process is well defined. We're very good at it, and it can be done. But our first thing is to try and not have to do surgery if we can.
I think there's also a lot of misconceptions. The FDA just withdrew their approval of stem cell work. I know there's been a lot of people said, oh, I can go get stem cells. That's not necessarily true anymore. And it's proven to be relatively ineffective, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think we ultimately will solve the problem of regenerating the long nerves, but that could be a decade or more off.
Okay, that's a good thing to know. Again, we're talking with Dr. Stephen Holt, the director of the North Texas VA Healthcare System, U.S. Air Force Bird Colonel. Wow, that's a wonderful thing that you've done. And you've worked with taking care of people all of your career. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about other things to take care of you. This is Alliance for the Brave, and we'll be right back after these words from all of our partners. London, thank you for being on board. Robin Valtudo, thank you for being our executive director. Brittany, thank you for being our engineer. And Diane, my beautiful wife, thank you. So we'll be right back after these words. Stay with us on Facebook. Observations so many friends have been down this line. It's not just one thing. You got to do this, 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 and this. And if you don't do all of these things, the one thing doesn't necessarily work. It's not just one.
So an important way to think about this, particularly regeneration, a baby takes about 12 to 15 months before they can stand. The nerves are there, but they have to be matured. The brain has to start training. And it's not until they're about 2.5 that they really can walk well. So if we gave you a new set of nerves, you probably would follow the same timeline. You're talking probably about 2.5 years.
But older you get, it takes even more time.
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the other big things that I have observed as a certified senior advisor, I have done some research and I have talked to a number of people, including a Dr. Ben Galliard out of Colorado. A lady came and spoke to my group, and they're talking about brain retraining. That's a big part of what you're talking about, because the spinal cord is part of the whole brain and nervous system. And brain retraining is really amazing. I always thought, hey, if you lost brain cells, you're out of luck. Not true. There is workarounds and things like that. And that takes a lot of time that I'm not necessarily hearing or seeing the civilian world. That's not profitable. You're not getting that as much as in our military veteran world.
Yeah, and that everything you say is true. The brain is shown to have an amazing amount of resilience that we just didn't know about before. And again, you got to remember that in the civilian world, you have to make money to keep the doors open. If you don't, the doors close. And to make money, typically those services have to be reimbursed by insurance. As the primary source of money. So, and the government has the wonderful role of being able to fill in gaps that aren't profitable at the time, that aren't profitable in the private sector. And then many times, once the government's mastered those gaps, the private sector can actually take those things and then turn them into a profit-making business. So the government has the role of pioneering things that private industry would not take on because of the risk of failure and the lack of profits.
Well, one of the things you made a point before we got started this morning is how the space industry, NASA, and all of the things that they have developed and that were developed for them have become now an integral part of our society. I mean, think back to what Apollo 13, that movie's out right now, one more time going around. Those guys were using technical equipment that today we'd laugh at. I mean, you got more calculating capability in your cell phone than they had in those pieces of equipment. So we have come so many advancements. But when did Apollo 13 happen? In the early 1970s? Or 1970s?
69 or 70, one or the other.
And so look at how far, that's 50 years. Where are we going to be 50 years from now?
Oh, goodness.
Well, I think the incredible thing y'all have to think about, first off, is...
All right, here we go. Facebook, thank you for being on board with us. Hang with us.
Today's program is brought to you by Gear Services Web Design. Visit us on Facebook or online at allianceforthebrave.com. And now, back to Alliance for the Brave.
Well, welcome back. This is Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, London Mason, the London Mason. Boom, boom. Yeah. I think your nickname was Smoke.
That's right.
And I won't tell you what mine was.
I won't tell you what mine was.
And Dr. Stephen Holt, the director of the North Texas VA. You've been involved in the VA many, many years, and you've seen a lot of wonderful changes. And one of the changes you've brought to our attention is this spinal cord center. So let's finish up the conversations that we've been having about that, because I have another topic I want to go into that has to do with total health. So do you have any other things that you want to make everybody aware? And if you're just now tuning in, go back to Alliance for the Brave and listen, because we've been talking about the new spinal cord center here in Dallas. There's 6 of them in the nation. These are huge, and especially if you're an older veteran and you're suffering with all kinds of spinal cord injuries and problems, You need to come talk to these guys. So, Dr. Holt, let's continue that conversation.
Sure. So let me say one thing just to clarify real quick. These centers are not just for military-related spinal injuries. Okay, you can be a veteran and be on a motorcycle and have a crash and have your spinal cord damaged and not be able to walk. And if you're eligible for VA care, we're going to take care of you, whether it was military associated or not. So don't think that, I left the military, had no service connection, and I'm really nothing they can do except give me a manual wheelchair. I can afford a manual wheelchair, and that's my life for the rest of it. Because we can take care of veterans based on income too. And so, for instance, in the Dallas area, if your income is less than 115% of the poverty level, you're eligible for care in the VA.
Wow. I think that's important. And again, we talked about the ease, and both of you guys said you made a mistake. You tried to do it your own self. Me, I went to the county veteran service officer to get all my paperwork put together. Now, can we change the subject? Because I have a very, very dear friend and his wife who have had the Delta variant of COVID-19. I think this is important. And Dr. Holt, you and I have talked about the importance of vaccination. We've got less than, or right at 50% of this nation has been vaccinated. Is that true?
That's roughly true, yes.
Okay. While there have been some people, as a result of vaccinations, have medical problems, the vast, vast majority, we're talking about 150 million people, have not. So tell me, what is so dangerous about this variant that has come up, and now we're seeing spiking of COVID-19 disease that is just unbelievable?
Well, so let me first say this evolution of the Delta variant proves that Mother Nature is very effective at upping the game, okay? And one of the real risks, if we don't get this under control, is yet a even more virulent, more dangerous variant will come out and replace the Delta, like the Delta replaced the original strain. So what we're seeing with this virus is a couple days of being asymptomatic, but at the same time shedding virus in the nose and the mouth, more than 1,000 times more viral particles. So it's one, we know it's twice as effective. It's more effective than smallpox, influenza, and chickenpox. Okay, this is a very effective virus. And two, because you can spread this thing without knowing that you're sick for a couple days, so you really come down with symptoms because of the amount. And it's actually 1,200 times the amount of viral particles. And the viral particles, the number you get in, determines whether you're going to get infected or not. Do they overcome the natural immunity, the natural defenses you have, like mucus, for instance, which is there to kind of trap these things and keep them from getting, and your antibodies. So this is very dangerous, this virus is, and it's much more aggressive, and you're much more likely to end up in the hospital or in the ICU. Now, what we have seen is some breakthrough cases, not a lot, but some breakthrough cases of people who've been fully vaccinated for the coronavirus. If you're fully vaccinated, you have a very, very low chance of actually getting sick enough to be admitted. And remember, if you get the virus, it's going to cost you money. You're not going to be able to go to work. You're going to have various problems. Or if you get admitted to the hospital, it's going to potentially cost you money. Who's going to take care of your dog? Who's going to take care of your garden, your house, if you're in the hospital for 30 days? I mean, this isn't just a simple, I get sick, I end up in the hospital for a week. Hospitalization costs you. And not just in the medical costs, but the other costs. So this virus is very aggressive. The entire Gulf Coast region is really the hot zone right now, is a big hot zone when I look at the maps that I get every day for this. And the good news is we're seeing a lot of people who are hesitant to get the vaccine are coming in now. We're seeing increasing numbers every day of people coming in to get the vaccine. So I think people really are seeing the importance. I will tell you this, I did an analysis for a talk I gave to my staff last week. The risk of dying of the risk of having a major complication from the vaccine is very small. The risk of dying of COVID, and this is based on the last quarter of 2020. Remember, we didn't spike until about February, March of this year, 2021, was 100 times greater. than having a major death-related complication of the vaccine. So if I told you, here, you have two investment options. Investment option one, you have a 1% chance of losing money. Investment option two, you have a 100% chance, or 100 times. Which investment option are you going to go with?
Well, I have a degree in finance. That's a no-brainer.
Well, you don't have to have a degree to figure that one out.
But it's your life you're talking about. And you and I have talked about, for instance, under the first COVID we had, there's so many different things. Besides the fact people dying, and I believe the majority of the people who died were people with pre-existing complications, elderly, nursing homes. That was where it went like wildfire. But some of the things we're seeing now with this, you don't just get a cold and get over it. There are repercussions that are unbelievable.
Yeah, what they call long hauler syndrome. And the biggest one is memory and the ability to think and process information is one of the biggest long-term complications, as well as fatigue, chronic muscle pain, and other things. But the memory one is really concerning because you and I have a common friend who basically very high functioning senior executive who just, has to be reminded to take a shower and has to be helped to dress now. And this is a person younger than you and I, okay?
Also, one of the most dedicated, finest people I've ever met. And you'd think, wow, because he was in the healthcare industry, and now he can't, he's, what would you say?
He can't function.
Yeah.
He can't be left alone because, and he can't function. And and this has been going on for over a year. So I don't see an end in sight for this. This is probably going to be his permanent state.
Golly, what a horrible nightmare. A guy like me who loves to run and play and go, and I know you walk, 25 miles a week or some wonderful thing?
Try to do that,
yeah. You shut us down, and that's kind of the end of life.
Pretty huge.
So in this situation, is this Delta variant so much more virulent than what we had before? Because I've seen statistics. You were saying that, but I want to repeat that. This is a lot worse, a lot more contagious, correct?
Yeah, it's twice as infective, and it produces more severe illness in people. And I want to say something else. Some states, our state, Texas, for instance, is not doing a mask mandate. And I fear that what we're going to see in a couple weeks, knowing that the curve is going up, and it's our infection curve, the number of new cases is paralleling what England went through several months ago. It was literally right on the track as you look at the daily. Okay, but with schools opening up again, I'm going to tell you, schools is a perfect medium to transmit this disease and then bring it home. And one of my colleagues, kids that are preschool age, brought it home, and that colleague got it and was quite sick. And even that colleague had been vaccinated, was quite sick, has been out for a week and a half. Doesn't look like anything permanent, which is the good news, but sick enough that, she would not have been able to come to work anyway. We wouldn't have allowed that. But, that person said this was like the worst case of flu she had ever had.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I don't want to go down that ride. And I had as soon as I could, I had the Pfizer vaccine and I had the follow-up. Now, that doesn't mean I may or may not get sick, but I've got a much, much, much higher chance of not having a problem.
And having a milder case.
Yes, without a doubt. And so I think if this thing keeps going, now, how do we stop it? Vaccinate, correct?
Correct, yes. And again, the risk of a serious complication of vaccine, I think there's been, the data I looked at, less than 7,000 deaths that may have been associated with the vaccine out of over 350 million doses. Okay, that puts your rate at about 1.9 per 100,000. Your chance of dying of COVID is 100 times that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you don't know in those cases that happened is what the underlying conditions were.
That's true. And the ones that seem to have that problem are the elderly, the over 60 folks who really need to be careful, about social distancing, good hand washing, wearing a mask when you're out in public, and again, keeping that distance away from other people.
I want to, because I'm a certified senior advisor, I work with seniors. You and I think, London, you're not old enough, but we practice taking care of ourselves. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I do 2 to 3 miles on a stride trainer. I do a minimum of 40 minutes of cardio. I know that I take care of myself, yet I know so many seniors who, well, I'm retired and I'm just going to sit here on the couch and watch Judge Judy. Well, I think there's a brain cancer that goes along with watching that kind of TV, quite frankly. And I mean, it degenerates. But if you're not moving and you're not grooving, you're not taking care of yourself. And a body that doesn't work starts having serious problems.
Well, I'll tell you, Jim, I can learn from you all that are much older than me, and I'm hoping that the younger generation will follow in your footsteps. But Dr. Holt, I definitely got to ask you this question: are there any new protocols in terms of vaccinations and things of that nature for the VA, or
There aren't any new protocols, and of course, the one that we're all looking is how the studies are going to look of whether we need boosters. That question has not been answered yet. What I can say is what we do know and what is recommended by the CDC, and we follow CDC guidelines in the VA, is even if you've had COVID, we recommend the vaccine. Because we don't know the effectiveness of the natural immunity from a COVID infection. We do know what it is from the vaccine. Mm-hmm. That's been well studied. So
now, if I wanted, and I got mine through the Baylor Scott and White healthcare system, but if I needed to get a COVID vaccine shot, what do I do? Who do I call?
We have an appointments line. It's on our webpage, and I'm sorry I don't have the number with me. You can call, get an appointment. The reason you need an appointment to get the COVID vaccine, we can occasionally take walk-ins, but we have to prepare the vaccine. That takes about an hour and a half, and the vaccine is only good for 6 hours, particularly the Pfizer. So if we don't use it, we have to waste it. So we don't like to waste the vaccine, obviously. So we give it at Fort Worth Outpatient Center in Fort Worth. We give it at Bonham, up in Bonham, Texas. We give it at the main campus, and we give it out at Tyler.
Okay, now, if this thing goes far enough, will you guys open it up to civilian population if they make an appointment?
Well, here it is already open to select civilians. So if you are a household member of an eligible veteran, if you provide care to an eligible veteran, like drive them to the store because they can go to the store, you are eligible to get the vaccine through the VA, as well as children 12 and up.
All right. This is phenomenal information. We've got Dr. Stephen Holt. If you've missed out, you just joined us, go to allianceforthebrave.com. Take a look at this date. You'll see it as a podcast. You need this information. So we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. This is London, Steve, and Jim. We're here for you. Take care of a healthcare professional or a person, a veteran, you can sign up and get an appointment. I think we ought to reiterate that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask, I'd like to ask, if you were a young person considering a medical profession, I think the military has got amazing training programs to be able to get somebody started in that. And I always want to make a pitch for young people to take a look at the military, and especially with the medical training programs that are available.
Yes, and I can talk real quick about the Hpsp Scholarships for people who want medical training, and then they come in and give 4 years to the military. The Armed Forces School of Medicine is a little bit longer, and then just the many opportunities in training in the military and the wide range of experiences that you just don't get in private practice.
And in London, I think we need to make sure we give out that VA website where you can go, where you can get information. Maybe you could jump in with that as well to give out that information. This is where we go. Plus the Veterans Crisis Hotline. I've got that number sitting right here, and we need to give that out. And then I think that we do need to talk, and we're talking here on Facebook with everybody about coming back with a total health program maybe in September, because one of my big things in September is suicide prevention. And to me, when you're talking about total health care and total self-care, that's an area where people can fall off the cliff real quick, and then their head gets in the wrong place.
Yep.
So let's maybe set that up and see what we can do. I think this is so incredible. Facebook, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of it. If you want to, please send us a message. If you'd like to send a message to Dr. Holt, just send it to me and I'll forward it on to him.
Look up on your phone what that appointments line is so I can put it on.
I don't have it on.
Okay, because I've got the va.gov sitting here.
Yeah.
Do you know what would I search? 'Cause I searched
I don't know that
appointments and you
it's
have to
posted
sign
per
in.
se. I'd have to get it. Yeah.
All right,
Okay, don't worry about it.
put on there to contact us.
Okay.
If you need it, we'll do it.
Should have thought of that.
Hey, let me tell you, there's so much. I love the spontaneity, though, that we're able to create with this program and help people. We're getting some wonderful feedback from some of our affiliates across the nation. So thank you for being on board. This is really important.
As always, thanks for inviting me.
So there's actually the coronavirus information. When you go to va.gov, it'll have it right there.
But it doesn't have the appointment line for
Right, yeah.
my different facilities.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's make a point of sending them to. I guess you could go to the local Dallas VA and get it.
Yeah.
Or Bonham.
It should be on our website.
You're listening to Alliance for the Brave, honoring, serving, and empowering those who serve our great country in the line of duty. Today's program is presented by Gear Services Web Design. Learn more about our mission and how you can plug in with us at allianceforthebrave.com. Now, back to the conversation.
Well, we're about to bring this program into the dock. Thank you, London, for always being a partner here. And thank you, Dr. Holt, for being a partner of ours in providing healthcare information to veterans. We have had a great program talking about the new spinal cord injury center. I'm sorry, I had a brain squeeze, and COVID-19. Again, if you're a veteran and you have not been vaccinated, get with the VA. Get with the VA. Get an appointment, because that vaccine has to be prepared and has a useful life of 6 hours. So you can't just walk in and get it, or they would be throwing away a lot of vaccine. I think that one of the things that's important, the only way we're going to beat this is when everybody gets vaccinated. Dr. Holt, I remember as a child getting the sugar cube with the polio vaccine. We had every child in America getting polio vaccine, and we beat polio. There hadn't been a case of polio in 50 years.
Yeah, we eliminated that disease, just like we eliminated smallpox.
Okay, so we need to focus on that. If you need information, how do you get an appointment? You need the appointment line. Contact me through allianceforthebrave.com. Dr. Holt, what would you say to a young medical professional, because you have been so involved, not only in the military medical, but the VA medical director of the VA? What would you say to a young person in school about their opportunities to get into the medical profession using the military or being part of the military?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's an incredible experience because, first off, we have great training opportunities. The Health Profession Scholarship Program, they pay for your medical school, give you a stipend, and you only owe them 4 years of service. There's also the Armed Forces School of Medicine, where I went to, they pay you a salary, and you go to school and you have a little bit longer obligation to pay back for that. But those are great. But the real thing about a military medical, I got to do things I never would have dreamed of, and my colleagues in the outside never. They usually get into practice, they stay in one place, or they end up going from company to company to company. I got to travel the world. I got to do humanitarian missions. I got to learn how to fly jets and helicopters, all kinds of really exciting things.
All right. I like to close every program with a prayer. So, Lord Jesus, we just say thank you for those men and women who are serving our nation, and thank you and keep them safe. Lord Jesus, thank you for helping our veterans with the wonderful, wonderful service of the dedicated professionals in the VA. God, thank you. And watch over our medical professionals, watch over our first responders. This we pray in Jesus' name today. Amen. Well, this has been a fabulous program. Yes. Dr. Holt, thank you for being on board. You're going to be a regular. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Third wheel.
We want to do some other things with you, some not only overall health, but some medical minutes that we provide for you that can be shown. So thank you for being part of Alliance for the Brave. Thank you for joining us. Brittany, thank you for being our engineer. And Diane, this is a fabulous day. Make the most of it. Join us with the VA. This is Alliance for the Brave. Thank you, and we'll see you next weekend.
Barely even 18, not sure what lies in store.